So how do you fit everything that you need and everything that you want in a small camper, much like this Scamp? Stick around. Hey folks, welcome to our Scamp life. If you're new to our channel here, we are all about Scamp campers. In particular, our 2006 Scamp 16. We talk everything Scamp camper, small camper, fiberglass style camper, and kind of everything in between. And we also like to talk about things that kind of make camping that much easier. And hey, if you're liking what you see, make sure that you hit that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, and click that bell so you get notifications when our next videos come out. So 3 years ago, we started this journey. We bought our Scamp camper. We made our first video just within a few weeks of owning our Scamp. I think we had only taken this thing on maybe one, maybe two trips in that little amount of time. But we thought that we, kind of knew a lot about the Scamp camper. We had done as much research as probably a person could do before buying a camper, and we were very well informed, but there was still a lot of stuff that we didn't know. But that didn't stop us from making a second video, which was one on how we store everything inside of our Scamp camper. So in that first storage video, we have a lot of things inside this camper. In fact, we tried to use every single nook and cranny possible to just make sure that we had everything you could possibly ever need inside a Scamp camper. We found that there were a lot of things, and I mean a lot of things, that we really didn't use. So those things came out, new things went in, some of those new things came back out, and here we are 3 years later with a camper that we're not even using all of the space inside of it because, well, quite frankly, we don't need to. So we just want to show you guys how we store our stuff in our Scamp camper, what we use, how we use this space to the best of its ability. Now there's lots of extra storage inside a Scamp camper that you may not know exist. Like there's storage underneath just about every cushion in the camper. These bins happen to be on the bottom bunk up front in our Scamp camper. We use one of them to keep all of our extra sports gear for when we get to a campground, we can throw a ball or hit a ball around as a family and have some fun. We've realized that we don't have to even utilize the second bin for anything else. So right now, that's just some empty space. But I have some plans for that possibly coming up here in the future. And the little oddly shaped bins all the way in the back of the Scamp work really well for holding small board games or card games, extra clothes, and our flashlights. Now technically in the rear there are two bins on the floor. One is underneath the left side or where your water tank and water pump are, and the other one is a big bin that you're going to push your electrical plug-in cord back in through the hole, and this is where that's going to stay. Now the side that has your water tank, there's not a lot of extra space, and there's a lot of electrical and water lines in there, so I wouldn't suggest storing anything that could potentially roll around and puncture, cut, or wreck one of those lines. So we don't put anything storage-wise on that side. But we do on the other side that has the power cable that we pull in and out. And we store things in here that we don't need to get to that often. Most of the time we leave our bed down. If you need to, you can easily set the table back up into place. But once our bed is made and our additional cushion is on top, it can be a little bit harder to access this bin. So we make sure that we put things in here that we're only going to need to pull out maybe once for the whole weekend and then put back away until the next time we're using it. So this is a great space for our crock pot, for some extra batteries or flashlights, and other repair items that you might not need to access all the time. And of course, this bin also works really well to have our hose in. Our Scamp camper also has a decent amount of kitchen cabinets, both uppers and lowers. We use these cabinets generally to hold our dishes and our food. The lower cabinets underneath our sink we use to hold any of our soaps and disinfectants that we might need. Then there's also a nice tall and somewhat deep clothes cabinet. We generally don't use this to hang clothes in, but it does work well to hold quite a bit of other stuff. So one of the ways that you can utilize your Scamp camper to the best of its ability is to use the wall space. Now, some of this wall space, if you have the deluxe version, which means you have the wood cabinets, some of this will work just as well, and some of it might not. We only have the fiberglass standard package, so a lot of this stuff we know works well on fiberglass or on the rat fur that's kind of all around you. So this rat fur that's on the wall works for insulation. It works to kind of keep some of that rough fiberglass back, the polished stuff you get to see. What we learned really quickly is that we could use the wall coverings as Velcro. So all you really have to do is get yourself some Velcro. In our case, we're using some 3M industrial grade Velcro. It holds really well to these walls, and you can attach small things like a flashlight or some extra lights or even a book to the wall. Now, we wouldn't recommend taking your camper down the road with all this stuff attached to your rat fur, but when you're stationary at a campground, this works great for holding whatever you want. Another thing that we love to use are command strips. They hold extremely well on the finished fiberglass, on the cabinets, and really all around our camper. We hold everything from our cutting boards to mirrors to Kleenex boxes. Basically any hard, flat surface that you can stick a command strip to, it seems to hold really well in this fiberglass camper. So you can get a lot of things out of a drawer or out of a cabinet and just make it easier to access. We also like to use the command strips to hold things down to the countertops, because when we're traveling, sometimes we'll have an extra bin or even just a small bin to hold salt and pepper shakers in, and that we would just want to stay in place. And the command strips work extremely well, again, for holding those things down. And if you want something more easily removable from a wall, like a mirror, you can use these Velcro, or they're actually called picture hanging command strips, to do that. Things will peel right away from the wall, and you can move them to different parts of your camper. We also like door hooks. The doors on your Scamp camper, whether on your cabinets or if you have a bathroom, the doors are a lot thinner, so you will have to bend the metal on any door hanger, but I would suggest picking up a couple of them because they're really handy to hold wet towels after swimming or showering, putting an extra pair of shoes on, or really anything you can think of. So a really cool thing that Sarah noticed was underneath the cabinets and underneath the side wet bath, if you have it in your Scamp camper, there's a lot of extra room. In fact, there's enough room to easily fit most pairs of shoes all the way underneath these cabinets. It really helps to get things out of the way, so make sure that you're using that space. It really helps when you need a little extra walking space and you don't want to be constantly tripping over shoes. So here's a friendly, not necessarily storage related tip, but something that we find really handy to keep in the camper. We have one of these plastic boot mats laying underneath our refrigerator. The reason for this is in case something leaks, we don't have to worry about it leaking on the carpet and having a lot more cleanup. This pan will catch anything that drips away and just makes cleanup a whole lot easier. We use a lot of bins in our cabinets, but these work really well to keep things not only organized, but also if you've ever watched a video of what a camper actually does when it's traveling down the road, you'll know exactly why these bins work so well to keep everything in place. Again, we use the Velcro strips attached to the bottom of the cabinets to keep these bins in place. So we can still remove them if we need to wash them out, but they stay in place when we're traveling down the road, therefore keeping everything where it needs to be. We found all of these bins at a Dollar Tree style store, somewhere where everything is a buck. We also have found a couple of larger bins at thrift stores for even less than $1. And the reason why these dollar store bins and storage unit things really work so well is because a lot of this stuff is intended for a dorm room or a very small apartment. So that's why it works so well inside a camper. When you're measuring inside your cabinets to figure out what bins you need, make sure that you measure not only the bottom of the cabinet, but also toward the top of the cabinet where the top of your bin might be sitting. Because remember, on Scamp campers, and really every fiberglass camper out there, the walls curve in as you get toward the top or the bottom of the camper. So whether you're looking at a top cabinet or a bottom cabinet, just make sure you take at least 2 measurements before you go out and find the bin that you need. The big bin that's underneath our front bunks, we use for things that I need to quickly access. And what I mean by quickly access is when we get to the campsite, Sarah goes into the camper and usually starts setting up all the interior stuff while I'm on the outside leveling everything up, or by getting our do-it-yourself awning set up, or getting the campfire going. So while she's getting everything up inside, we don't want to be bumping into one another or taking up each other's space or getting into each other's way. So I put all the tools that I'm going to need, lighters, lighter fluid, and other items easily accessible for me from outside the camper. All I have to do is reach in, open the door, pull out a drawer, and I can grab exactly what I need. And while I'm talking about easily accessible stuff, I know that I've mentioned this before, but we actually use that same Velcro technique on the side wall of our camper in between our screen door and the outside door. So that way, if I'm getting ready to start the fire or to start a grill, I don't have to ask Sarah to hand me the lighter while she's doing something else. I can just reach in quickly, grab it, and I'm good to go. Again, use the space that you have to the best of its ability. Now, when you're looking for bins, have some fun with it. We went for different colors. We didn't get everything to match. Hey, you're camping. It's the same thing with all of our dishes. Nothing really matches because we went to a thrift store and we found what we could for as cheap as we could. They work extremely well, but just remember, not everything needs to match. And another little tip and trick that we use for storage is don't throw away all of your extra pill bottles. They come in really handy for storing things like Q-tips, Band-Aids, even our essential oils. And then we found that even an old mint container works well to put our cough drops in. One of the main differences that you might realize between a 13-foot and a 16-foot Scamp camper is the countertop space. The reason that we went with a 16-foot, because when we started looking, our plan was actually to buy a 13-foot with no bathroom. But when we walked through it, we realized that we wanted a little bit more countertop space, because when we camp, we really don't like to go out to eat. One of my favorite things to do when we're camping is to cook. Now, you can order these from just about any RV place, but I just decided to make my own from some extra cabinet doors that I had laying around. This just gives a little bit of extra countertop space if you're not using the sink or you're not using your stove top. But because mine are made out of wood, or maybe the ones that you buy might be made out of plastic, just make sure as a safety precaution that your stove is turned off before putting anything but a pot or pan on top of it. When you use your refrigerator, especially if you don't pre-cool it down before you leave the house, it can warm up whatever countertop it's under pretty quickly. And when we had our buns and our bread sitting out there, even some of our fruits and vegetables, they began to get hard, or they began to ripen a little bit quicker than we wanted. So we added this little bin with slide out drawers that we can put different things in, our canned goods on the bottom, and then stack our fruits, vegetables, and even our bread up on top. Now, this was a 3-tier cabinet, and I was able to remove one of the tiers. And then because we wanted it to stay stable on the countertop, we used command strips, and they've been doing a great job to hold it down for these last few years. But we can pull the heavy drawers out when we're traveling, put them on the bed, and everything's ready to go, easily sliding back in when we're ready and set up at camp. The first modification that I made to our Scamp camper was this little shelf inside of our side linen cabinet. It's just made from some PVC pipe that I had laying around and some extra wood. But this cabinet we use to put our collapsible laundry basket for all of our dirty clothes and blankets. It just makes it really easy all in one place to have your dirty clothes and to pull it out quickly. But this fits really nice down in the bottom, leaving a little bit of extra space. Our first 2 years, we actually had enough space to store a small television and DVD player on its side inside this cabinet. But then on the upper shelf, we store things like toiletries, extra sheets and pillowcases, and an extra blanket or two for those cold nights. You'd be surprised how much you can actually fit in this cabinet. Rather than using bags or suitcases to carry our clothes in, we like to use these long laundry baskets. They're relatively inexpensive, and they fit perfectly on the bottom bunk inside our camper. Our pots and pans are stored on the bottom cabinet underneath our stove because it's closest to the stove. And we don't actually carry a lot for pots and pans because even though we cook quite a bit, most of it can be done in 1 or 2 pans. That, and there's not a lot of extra space on top of a small cooktop like this. Again, we just picked up our pots and pans from a secondhand store or a thrift store. For our pots and pans inside our camper, they're not necessarily sitting in any bin because they kind of stay in place, but we have noticed that they move around a little bit. So if you're going to be using cast iron or a heavy pot and pan, just make sure that they're held down into place and they're not going to be moving around in that earthquake called a camper when you're driving. The only thing that I really don't like about the interior, about the cabinets of the Scamp camper, is that it only has, at least our model, only has 1 drawer. So we have to be able to fit all of our stuff inside our 1 drawer. But again, there's only 3 of us, and we have place settings for 4 people. Now, not all of the stuff matches because, again, we bought everything from a secondhand store, but we saved a ton of money. Now, because we do lots of cooking in and outside of our camper, and even some baking over the fire, we have quite a few more utensils than someone who's not going to be doing a lot of cooking or baking may need. So there you have it, folks. Some tips and tricks on how we get the most out of our small Scamp camper. We spent quite a bit of time researching these campers, and of course, we've owned our Scamp now for about 3 years. So feel free to ask any questions that you may have about the Scamp camper in the comment section down below. So hopefully you guys liked this video. If you did, make sure that you hit that subscribe button. It just lets us know that what we're doing is working. Give us a thumbs up. And also, if you want to know when our next videos are coming out, hit that bell so that you get the notifications. So as always, guys, until next time, God bless.